CNBC TV18, celebrating 15 years of leadership.
Our top story tonight, get ready for a clean India tax. In the budget, the government mulls imposing a cess not just on telecom but on all services as it looks to build an arsenal of 1 lakh crore rupees over 5 years. The money will be used to fund the ambitious Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. That's an exclusive.
The government wants to keep tabs on the online retail industry. Sources say the centre planning to regulate and monitor activities of e-commerce companies. Consumer Affairs Ministry floats a note to all branches of government. That's another exclusive.
The centre gears up to sell up to 10% stake in Coal India. The floor price for the offer for sale is set at 358 rupees a share, a 4.5% discount to today's closing price. The centre eyes over 20,000 crore rupees in what could potentially be the largest stake sale in a PSU.
Airtel ties up with Kotak Mahindra Bank as it embarks in a pursuit of a payment bank license. Kotak will pick up nearly 20% in Airtel's mobile commerce business once the RBI waves the green flag.
Bulls arrive late on expiry day. A late pullback helps major indices close at record levels. The Sensex cracks the century. The Nifty gains for the 10th straight day.
In major earnings, HDFC on target with third quarter numbers. Profits rise over 11% as expected. Dr. Reddy's in good health as the fall in profits is lower than expected, but Asian Paints disappoints with a tepid set of third quarter numbers.
Adani Group is set to announce a major restructuring of its businesses tomorrow. Sources say shareholders of Adani Enterprises will be rewarded with shares in Adani Ports and Power, as the move will help curb the discount on the holding company.
The BJP poses 5 questions to Arvind Kejriwal. AAP accuses BJP of trying to bribe its supporters. Rahul Gandhi slams Prime Minister Modi for wearing a 10 lakh rupee suit. Just 9 days before Delhi votes, the battle is heating up.
On the hour as the countdown begins for the budget, can the finance minister meet the 4.1% fiscal deficit target? Will smart cities get a push, and will Food Corporation of India get a facelift? A slew of special budget reports coming up. Well, the curtains have come down on the 4-day Republic Day celebrations with a spectacular beating the retreat ceremony. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. Nantara, I wish I was there.
I wish I was there, and I wish you could be a pass next year.
I'm not in studio next year. Next year, both Nantara and I shall be at the beating the retreat ceremony. But it seemed like the bulls were retreat on the last street after a 9-day rally, but then a spectacular recovery in late trade did lift sentiment. That is right, the Nifty gaining for the 10th consecutive session. So let's kick things off with the day's trading action. A roller coaster ride on expiry days. The market saw some pretty wild swings before there was a late recovery, which helped the major indices end the day with healthy gains. The Nifty, though, continues to march towards 9,000, ending the day just above 8,950. That is a record closing level for the Nifty. The Sensex also shutting shop at record levels, cracking a century thanks to that late pullback. The mid-caps, though, couldn't keep up with the blue chips, and the mid-cap index ended the day with marginal losses. But this was the stock in focus. The stage is all set for the government to sell up to 5% stake in Coal India via an offer for sale tomorrow. The government has set the Coal India OFS floor price at 358 rupees a share. That's a 4.5% discount to the current market price. Sources say some merchant bankers had suggested 347 as the floor price against 358 decided. Even at this price, the centre could mop up over 20,000 crore rupees against the targeted 15,470 crore rupees, which was the budgeted plan in the original action plan on disinvestment in Coal India. So will Coal India have enough appetite from investors? The government certainly hopes so. Listen in to a couple of market experts.
It is properly in line with expectation. 5% discount to the current market price was something which we have been calculating. And I think this particular price should be considered fair. Given the kind of a opportunity that one is getting to invest into such a large company, the global investors wouldn't mind, I think, taking this particular call and buy this company at a 5% lower to the market price.
We were expecting somewhere in the range of 360 to 365, so somewhat below our estimate. But we believe that considering the huge size of the OFS, the government has tried to give a major discount so that even the green shoe option is subscribed to, and the government doesn't have to come back to the street again for raising funds.
So it looks like the market likes the discount that's been given by the government of 4.5% for Coal India's OFS. This is the big one that the government is banking on. So remember, tune into CNBC TV 18 tomorrow morning. You get the action right here live on the show. Now, the Prime Minister's Swachh Bharat Abhiyan will need a whopping 1 lakh crore rupees over the next 5 years. The government is going the tried and tested way of imposing a cess to mobilize funds. Government sources tell CNBC TV 18's Malvika Jain that while the initial plan was to impose a cess on telecom services, this may now be extended to other services as well.
To fund Prime Minister Narendra Modi's pilot project, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the government is now eyeing a cess on consumer services, including telecom. The Ministry of Sanitation has sought a corpus of 1 lakh crore rupees to be utilized over a period of 5 years. Out of this, the total cost of the urban campaign is expected to be around 62,009 crore rupees, of which the union government will contribute 14,620 crore. It hopes to mobilize the rest from non-state entities such as corporates. While corporate India has made generous contributions towards the Swachh Bharat Kosh and the World Bank has committed over $1 billion, the government is far from its target. This has prompted the Finance Ministry to consider a 0.02 to 0.05% cess on all services, particularly those related to telecom.
Watch my lips.
Your silence tells me it is coming, or your non-committal response tells me it is coming.
No, frankly, a final view is yet to be taken, so it would probably be premature of me to speculate on this.
According to sources, the cess is likely to be introduced by way of an amendment to the Service Tax Act during the budget session. This proposal has irked the telecom sector.
Imposing a further cess on an industry that is already overburdened at 30% of every rupee that we get, that much goes back to the government. So further imposing a cess will only dampen the demand, because that's going to translate into higher prices. So we don't believe that that's the right way to go. A tax is perhaps a more appropriate way to go, that will be collected from the end user and then given to the government.
It is not just your telephone bills which may escalate, according to sources. In view of the green signal from the Attorney General on levy of cess on the telecom sector, it may well be extended to all services covered under the Service Tax Act. In New Delhi, Malvika Jain.
All right, so Swachh Bharat cess coming in, not just likely to be levied on telcos, but across the board for everybody that falls under the service tax net. Now on to the other big story this evening. It's being dubbed as India's sunrise sector, and the government wants to keep tabs on the e-commerce industry. Sources say the centre is mulling regulating and monitoring the online retail sector. Nantara, what else are you picking up? We understand that a draft cabinet note or a draft note for the Committee of Secretaries has been put together to try and find a way to regulate the e-commerce sector.
Yes, they feel it's not regulated at all. fault. They don't know who's supposed to be in charge of the sunrise sector, and therefore the Consumer Affairs Ministry has been getting a lot of the complaints from consumers, traditional retailers, and all the questions from parliamentarians are being forwarded to this ministry. Has decided it's time to delegate and regulate the sector. Now, what I understand from my sources is that as many as two ministries, that's the Consumer Affairs Ministry as well as the IT department under the Department of Telecommunications, is actively considering how to regulate this sector. A note has been prepared which has been floated to several ministries, to the committee of secretaries on this entire issue. The point is, and what Consumer Affairs is saying, is that clearly demarcate that when you look at the various business activities of online retail, who is in charge of what. For example, it's got complaints against predatory pricing. It's got complaints that online retailers are operating out of geographies which have low tax rates. Complaints against cybersecurity, consumers not getting refunds, etc. So, for example, it's saying if you're talking about corporate fraud, that should come under the Corporate Affairs Ministry. If you're talking about predatory pricing, that should come under Corporate Affairs Ministry. Server registration, cybersecurity should be under the IT department. Payment gateways, that should be under the Reserve Bank. Taxation issues should be under the the Finance Ministry. So this is what they're really looking at. But Shireen, the big fear is, and this is what the online retailers are saying, is that you're starting off with this, but where does it end?
Absolutely, and the fears of over-regulation are bound to creep up now. Vivek Gupta, partner at BMR Advisors, joins us to take this discussion forward. Vivek, appreciate you joining us. This note that has been circulated by the Consumer Affairs Ministry, it gives you a sense of the confusion prevailing within the government, because the preamble, if I could call it that, talks about the opportunities of e-commerce and e-tail. It talks about various reports that are pegging the size of the e-commerce market and so on and so forth. And then it goes on to talking about the complaints that are coming in, how this has been an issue raised in Parliament and so on and so forth. Let's deal with one of the arguments that they're putting in place in order to get some sort of a regulator or more regulation in, and that is the level playing argument. I'm quoting from what the Consumer Affairs Ministry says. It says, in the absence of specified rules and regulations and monitoring and supervision of online trade, there is no level playing field vis-a-vis the traditional retail trade, who are subject to a number of licenses, permissions and strict supervision by local and state authorities. How would you respond to this argument?
See, so I haven't seen the note, so whatever I say, I'm only reacting to what I'm hearing from you. The clear fact is that e-tail as a sector has grown very tremendously in the last 2-3 years. It has seen probably close to $10 billion of foreign investment. It has seen huge growth, a lot of consumers coming in, a lot of suppliers coming in, and so on and so forth. So conceptually, I have no trouble with the government wanting to regulate the sector. This sector also has very unique and specific aspects in the way business is transacted. So to the extent our laws need to get amended to recognize those specific aspects of e-commerce, I really have no trouble with this sector going in for its own regulation. In fact, if I may point to the China example, in late 2013, China embarked on a whole process to overhaul its laws relating to e-commerce, and now they are bringing into place those laws which specifically address the unique aspects of e-commerce. So conceptually, I have no trouble with a law that is progressive and a law that recognizes these unique aspects and therefore seeks to regulate them. Now, that regulation could be around the whole investment scenario, FDI and so on. That regulation could be around the whole taxation scenario. That regulation could be around anti-competitive things. That regulation could be around level playing field. Or that regulation could be around consumer rights. Because I think consumer rights are very well established in the physical retail format. In the e-tail format, they're not so well established. So all of this can happen if the... I think my reaction is I have no trouble with it. The key thing, however, is to note that the government must act in a very balanced and very progressive way, which is the Chinese example, actually. They must recognize that this sector has huge impacts on the economy. This sector is not now a reality. In their zeal for addressing some of these issues, they must not lose sight of the fact that a Vodafone-type retrospective risk exists here also. Because the fact of the matter is, the government is regulating this after a certain amount of investment has already come into the sector. And that certain amount of investment is a very large investment. So they should not alter fundamentally the playing field, but the fact that this sector should be regulated, I don't think I have any quarrel with it. In fact, I would go one step further and say that if policies around the sector are clear, they are well laid out, and they are simple, that's actually good for the growth of the sector. So if this note that you're talking about...
That's the fear, Vivek, because if I can quote to you again from the note, and again, I don't think I'm arguing that there shouldn't be regulation for the sector either. But then it goes on to say that the e-commerce sector provides a challenge in terms of its monitoring, regulation, supervision, etc. The industry's operations are too diverse and complex to be under the purview of any single department or ministry, and therefore what needs to be done is a clear demarcation of the activities and issues of e-commerce to be handled by different departments and designation of the nodal department or ministry. Now basically you're essentially saying that this is going to be an area that is going to be monitored, regulated, supervised by more than half a dozen different government departments.
Which is the same, by the way, for my business or your business. All corporate outfits in India are today regulated across ministries. So if a foreigner wants to come in and invest into a business, that's regulated by the DIPP as part of FDI. If I have to pay tax, that's regulated by the Department of Revenue. If I do something anti-competitive, that's regulated by the CCI. So I don't see that as being very different for any other business. So just the mere fact that 5 departments are going to have oversight over different aspects of the e-commerce industry, I have no quarrel with. I just feel that we should not go overboard with the kind of regulation that we bring about. And there are good global examples of how progressive regulation can come in, which can actually help the growth of the sector while addressing all the problems that some of the impacted parties seem to have with the sector.
Okay, Vivek, finally, before we let you go, one of the other issues that the ministry is raising is the complaints that they got on account of issues of predatory pricing and so on and so forth, also FDI, and that is a grey area as far as the sector is concerned. And the note says, while there is confusion regarding consumer grievances, consumer protection issues, clarity is needed in defining internal trade, especially with respect to e-commerce activities to be handled by the Department of Consumer Affairs. Make sense of this for us if you can.
So I think this is a definitional issue. This probably means that queries are going to a certain department of the government and they want to sort of farm it out to the right department. So if it's a query relating to FDI, that should probably go to the Ministry of Commerce or Ministry of Finance. If it's a query relating to taxes, it should go to a certain other ministry. So this probably is just the government's internal working, and therefore, I don't read too much into it, into what you just said.
In 10 seconds, Vivek, if you were asked for what the prescription should be in terms of appropriate regulation and, of course, judicious regulation, what would you say needs to be the driving thought or the driving principle?
So I think the driving principle is we must recognize the fact that e-commerce has unleashed a wave of entrepreneurship in the country. It has unleashed a wave of foreign investment, foreign capital into the country. And we must positively look at this sector to see its advantages and therefore encourage all of that investing and entrepreneurial flow that has happened in the economy. It has had a lot of ancillary advantage in the form of logistics, in the form of job creation and so on and so forth. At the same time, I think the core principle that multi-brand retail in India is a regulated sector, I think that should be recognized. So some of the unique aspects, and actually practically in the market, all of this is very nicely evolving. Most of the e-commerce players are actually marketplaces, which are giving opportunities to local Indian businesses to sell their products on the e-commerce platforms. So I think if the government recognizes the advantages of the e-commerce sector, and at the same time marries them to the basic policy prescription that they have regarding multi-brand retail trade, I think a good policy can emerge in the sector.
All right, Vivek, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you joining us. That's Vivek Gupta of BMR Advisors, taking us through the road ahead if we were to see regulation for the e-commerce sector, which is currently in the works as per our sources. Now to the big corporate story. We were the first to tell you it is now official. Airtel M-Commerce Services, which is the wholly owned subsidiary of telecom giant Bharti Airtel, has applied to convert its existing prepaid payment instrument license into a payments bank license. This has Kotak Mahindra Bank rubbing its hands with glee in a bid to expand its banking banking footprint. The bank says it will pick up a 19.9% stake in Airtel M-Commerce Services. Remember, AMSL offers mobile money services under the brand name Airtel Money. However, this deal, of course, will go through only if the RBI gives its go-ahead. Lata joins us now with her key takeaways from that announcement. Lata, can we dub this Airtel Kotak Mahindra deal a win-win?
It is very tempting to call it a win-win situation, but we cannot say anything like that at the moment. It could be a lose-lose situation. It could be a win-lose situation as well. The viability of the payment bank as yet is not known, but most of the activities actually require both a telecom intelligence, a communication intelligence, as well as a banking intelligence. The payments bank will be allowed to collect deposits, current and savings deposits. Now, that is an intelligence which resides in the banking piece. It will be allowed to give debit cards. Now, that is something where the mobile would be eminently useful. It can make remittances, which will be useful both and require the knowledge of both the bank and the telecom piece. So, it is very clear that this is a very useful joint venture where an intelligence of both will be needed. The monies collected can only be invested. They can't be loaned. And that investment and its back end is something that the banks will be familiar with, that Kotak will be familiar with. So one can see that this is an eminently sensible marriage, but how much each will make out of it is not known. It is not difficult to see that the payment bank cannot be making profits at least in the first 2 or 3 years. Thereafter, what the telecom guy gets is stickiness. 99% of Bharti Airtel's customers are likely to be prepaid customers who will keep on jumping to other telecom providers. If you give them a payment service and they are regularly getting remittance from their relatives, from the bread earner who's staying in an urban location, then there is a stickiness to the product. That is the advantage he gets, and every transaction will mean a fee. For the banking side, immediately there is no money in it, except that probably through that outlet, he is able to later on sell asset-based products like loans. But that will obviously happen only in subsequent times. Immediately one doesn't know if there is a profit. It is an experiment, but it is two very energetic parties coming together. This is the best chance for the payment bank to succeed, I would think.
So there you go. There's Bharti Airtel, perhaps the first off the block in partnership with Kotak Mahindra Bank. Thanks, Lata, for joining us with that. Let's get your reactions now. Deepak Gupta, Kotak Mahindra Bank told CNBC TV 18 the bank's investment into this payment bank would give it a foothold in a totally new customer segment and then expand its reach through Airtel's vast reach in the Indian market. Listen in.
First, a play into a totally new customer segment, basically the inclusive customer segment. You know, as a standalone bank, it is practically impossible to reach out to that mass in the marketplace. And if you look at Bharti, they have a phenomenal reach. Particularly if you look at rural pockets, the underbanked, unbanked segments, they have an existing reach. So it's a great way to reach out to, you know, a wider inclusive segment.
Well,
That's Kotak Mahindra Bank explaining what it stands to gain by picking up 19.9% in that payment bank venture. So Airtel clearly making its move. Sources say Vodafone likely to have applied for a payment bank license, and not just Vodafone, even Telenor is likely to apply soon. Shireen.
Well, that's the action in the payment bank space. The deadline for applications is the 2nd of February. On to earnings now. Housing major HDFC reported third quarter numbers which were bang in line with estimates. Net interest income up 14.4% year-on-year. Profits saw an uptick of 11.5%. That was a tad lower than what the street was expecting. Net interest margins showed some weakness at 3.93%, and that figure was at the lower end of the expected range. Asset quality, though, was stable. CNBC TV 18's Ritu Singh caught up with KK Mistry, the Vice Chairman and CEO of HDFC. Take a look.
Asset quality, again, touch wood, no signs of any serious concern. Our gross non-performing loan number in December stood at 0.69%, which is actually exactly what it was in September of this year, same 0.69%, but it's an 8 basis points improvement over 0.77%, which is where we were in December of last year. So compared to December, it's 8 basis points lower. Compared to September, it's more or less the same. It's actually exactly the same.
So HDFC Bank numbers bang in line with estimates. On to more corporate news, Adani Group planning a major overhaul of its businesses. The Adani Enterprises stock, in fact, was buzzing in trade today, a day ahead of its earnings. Sources saying the company, that's Adani Enterprises, may announce plans of a mega restructuring along with its results tomorrow. We understand from our sources, shareholders of Adani Enterprises are likely to get direct shares in its power and port subsidiaries. The idea behind this recast is to help curb the discount on the holding company, which is Adani Enterprises. When contacted, Adani Enterprises told CNBC TV 18 it cannot comment on market speculation.
Well, this has been the buzz for about a couple of days in the market now, and let's see if we do see that announcement on the restructuring coming in tomorrow with the earnings. Back to our budget countdown. The government has begun the spade work to deliver on the promise of 100 smart cities by 2024. CNBC TV 18's Alexander Matthew reports that the final framework for the Smart City initiative is getting clearer and should be finalized by the 31st of March.
Finance Minister Arun Jaitley allocated 7,000 crore rupees for smart cities in his government's first budget. And what was then an election promise will soon start becoming a reality. The Urban Development Ministry says the policy framework for the initiative will definitely be ready by the 31st of March, and on-the-ground action can be expected soon after. Phase 1 will see 100 cities being shortlisted on the basis of a slew of parameters like economic potential, heritage and tourism potential. This list will then be whittled down through a sort of competition, where the cities will be graded on 3 criteria: e-governance, Swachh Bharat and Make in India.
Identification of the first set of cities should be over by 31st of March. Okay, then, and thereafter it will take 5 to 10 years time to develop that city as a smart city. Second phase of selection of town will be another 3 months or 6 months kind of thing. It's a continuous process thereafter.
This continuous process will mean the government has to get its funding in place well in time. After all, conservative estimates suggest upgrading existing towns and cities into smart cities is likely to cost over 150 crore rupees per 500 acres. And that's just for improving infrastructure. So the cost of greenfield expansion and development will be extra. But the government is not worried.
I can only assure you that there will not be any paucity of money, paucity of funds for the development of these towns.
There's good reason for this optimism. So far, the government has not touched the 7,000 crore rupees allocated to this initiative in the 2014 interim budget. And with some progress being made, the finance minister may well add to this allocation in the upcoming budget. Also, the government expects 80 to 85% of the required funding for the development of smart cities to come from the private sector. And this will pick up steam once the policy framework is in place. In Mumbai, Alexander Matthew.
Well, we'll have to see what the finance minister finally decides to allocate as far as the Smart City initiative is concerned in this budget. But on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching.